All right, let's talk about something that is absolutely critical for any transit agency that gets federal funding: the FTA's Drug and Alcohol Testing Program. And look, this is so much more than just paperwork. We're talking about safety. And if you get this wrong, it can cause some serious, serious problems. So let's dive right in.
This quote right here really hits the nail on the head. It perfectly captures why the FTA is so intense about this. Just think about it for a second. Your drivers, your mechanics, the dispatchers. I mean, if anyone in these roles is impaired, it puts the public in direct danger. This is not some box you can just check off a list. It's a core responsibility.
So, where does all this come from? Well, it all boils down to a federal regulation, 49 CFR Part 655. And the bottom line is really, really simple. If your agency accepts even $1 of FTA grant money, you have to have a compliant testing program for all of your safety-sensitive employees. It doesn't matter if you're big or small, this one's totally non-negotiable. And, it's pretty wild how often agencies get dinged for this during audits, especially the smaller ones. The problems usually fall into three big buckets. You've got some agencies with no program whatsoever, which is a huge red flag. Others have a program, but their paperwork is just a mess. And a whole lot of them just miss that annual reporting deadline. To an auditor, any of these is a major problem. Okay, so let's get into the nitty-gritty, because this is where things can get confusing, and it's where a lot of programs start to fall apart. We've really got to nail down three things: who gets tested, when they get tested, and how the whole thing works. Get this stuff right, and you're building a rock-solid foundation for your program. So the first big question is always, who exactly are we testing here? The rule is super specific. It's only for safety-sensitive employees. So as you can see, we're talking about your drivers, your mechanics, your dispatchers, basically anyone whose job, if they were impaired, could directly threaten public safety. One of the biggest and costliest mistakes agencies make is testing everybody, like the admin staff or HR folks. You don't have to, and frankly, it's just a waste of money. The key is to define these safety-sensitive roles in your policy right from the get-go. Next up, when do you actually do the testing? Well, the FDK lays out these 6 specific situations. Pre-employment is obvious, right? You test them before they start. Random testing has to happen all year long. Reasonable suspicion is for when a trained supervisor actually sees signs of impairment. Post-accident is mandatory after certain kinds of incidents. And then you've got return to duty and follow-up tests, which are for employees who've had a violation in the past. Your program has to be ready for all 6 of these. Okay, let's talk about random testing, because this is a really big one. For drugs, the FTA mandates that you test 50% of your safety-sensitive employee pool every single year. So let's say you have 10 safety-sensitive people: drivers, mechanics, the whole group. That means you need to conduct 5 random drug tests, and they have to be spread out through the year. You can't just do them all in January. That's not random. It has to be a legitimate, scientifically random selection process that's ongoing. And then for alcohol, it's a totally separate number: 10% of your safety-sensitive pool each year. So using our example of 10 employees, that means at least 1 random alcohol test. And here's the absolute key takeaway: you are tracking 2 different rates for 2 different tests. You have to hit both of these minimums to be compliant. You can't mix and match them. So managing random pools, tracking 2 different rates, finding labs, dealing with the results, it sounds like a full-time job, doesn't it? For a small agency, it's a massive burden. But the good news is there is a simple, industry-standard solution that takes pretty much all of that work right off your plate. And here it is, the C/TPA, which stands for Consortium or Third-Party Administrator. Just think of a C/TPA as your dedicated compliance partner. This is a company that specializes in managing drug and alcohol testing programs for organizations just like yours. They handle the random picks, they coordinate with the labs, they manage the results. They do the whole shebang, making sure you stay compliant. For almost any small agency, using a C/TPA isn't just a good idea, it's really the only practical way to get this done right. And getting started is actually so simple. You sign a contract with them, and you give them your list of safety-sensitive employees. And that's pretty much your part. The C/TPA takes it from there. They'll tell you who needs to be tested and when. Your employee goes to a local lab, and the C/TPA handles all the results. Your main job is just to keep the final records they send you. It really takes all the risk and the headache out of the equation. Now, even if you have a great C/TPA doing all the heavy lifting, you're not totally off the hook. At the end of the day, the final responsibility for compliance still rests with you, and that means getting the paperwork right. Believe me, this is where a lot of agencies with perfectly good testing programs still end up failing an audit. And the biggest piece of paperwork you need to worry about is the annual MIS report. That stands for Management Information System, and you have to file it with the FTA every year by March 15th. It's basically a scorecard of all your testing activity from the year before. You have to report things like how many people are in your testing pool, how many tests you did of each type, if you had any positives and what you did about them. If you wait until March 14th to try and pull all this data together, well, you are just setting yourself up for a world of pain.
And everything we've talked about has to be supported by a formal written policy. This document is the foundation of your entire program. It needs to have a few absolutely critical things in it: a clear statement of purpose, a specific list of every single safety-sensitive job title, what substances are banned, and very clear consequences for a violation. And here's one a lot of people miss. It has to document that you are training your supervisors. That's a mandatory piece of the puzzle.
Okay, so we've gone through the why, the who, and the what. Now let's get to the most important part: how you can take all this information and either build a compliant program from scratch or fix the one you've already got. Let's lay out a clear action blueprint.
And you know what? This does not have to be some giant, scary project that takes forever. Just look at this timeline. You can realistically go from 0 to 100% compliant in about 3 months. Month 1, that's for getting your policy written and signing a contract with the CTPA. In month 2, you set up your record-keeping files and get that supervisor training on the calendar. And by month 3, you're doing the training, you're rolling out the policy to your employees, and you're officially live. It's a completely doable process.
So let's just boil it all down to this one simple checklist. This is your guide right here. Do you have a written policy? Check. Is your C/TPA contract signed and active? Check. Is your supervisor training documented and sitting in a file somewhere? Do you have a clear procedure for what to do immediately after an accident? And are you on track to file that MIS report by March 15th? If you can confidently say yes to all of these, you are in fantastic shape.
And that really brings us to the final and most important question. After everything we've just gone over, I want you to ask yourself honestly, if an FTA auditor showed up at your front door tomorrow, could your agency pass? If the answer is anything other than a resounding, confident yes, then now is the time to take action, because your riders are counting on it.